All right, so what we're going to be discussing here is the body's position that we get to the moment our front foot gets into the ground for the very first time. And this moment in time is called our foot strike. So we are going to be talking about the moment when, boom, those feet get into the ground for the very first time. And again, that's called our foot strike position. At foot strike, we want to be looking at our body in two halves. Our upper half and our lower half. At foot strike, we want our lower half to have rotated forward towards our target. And a useful thing to look at to know if we've been able to do that is the belt buckle. And is that belt buckle facing the target? If the belt buckle is facing the target, it's a pretty good chance that we have successfully rotated both the back foot, the back knee, and the back hip. When we're able to rotate the back foot, the back knee, and the back hip, as our front foot is getting into that foot strike position, we will successfully be able to get our belt buckle driving towards the target. If we specifically take a look at just the back foot of these four guys, let's watch as they are rotating that back leg, how that back foot is rotating. At this point in time, all four guys still have their entire foot flat onto the ground, and then they begin to rotate through or over top of their big toe. Their foot kind of rolls, folds over, or drives forward. And as the foot does that motion, we now shift our view to the back knee and know as the foot is rolling over the big toe, that the back knee is also rotating forward. And how those two things, the back foot and the back knee, are working together. We can also see that as we go to drive and rotate that back foot and back knee, how they do that while they gain ground down the mound and towards their catcher. So this is the difference between rotating our bodies forward, or a word for that is driving ourselves forward, versus just rotating in place. If we were just rotating in place, our bodies would not be able to gain this ground down the mound. Our bodies wouldn't be able to accelerate our power and energy down the mound. And we can then look and see that the foot has the toe, and then the heel is in front of the toe, meaning we have rotated forward. We then go to the upper body, the upper halves, from the waist up, and we want to separate that upper body from the lower body. We want the direction that our hips are facing, which is to the target, to be separate from the direction our shoulders are facing. So we notice we can see the Giants, the Padres, the Pirates, and his number. We can see the Phillies, and we can see the Brewers or Milwaukee. I'm not sure what they have displayed on their jerseys there. So the direction of their lower bodies is to the target, and the direction of their shoulders is still facing, for these right-handers, towards third base, or the direction they have been the entire time. So we rotate the lower body first, then we get into foot strike, then we rotate our upper body second. And the more that we can get those lower bodies to fully rotate to the target by the time that front foot hits the ground, and we've also been able to keep that upper body from rotating and staying back, we will have created as much upper lower half separation or hip shoulder separation as possible. And the more hip shoulder separation or upper lower half separation we can create, the more power we're going to be able to produce, and the amount of stress that's put on our arm is going to be reduced. What we're also going to notice is that almost regardless of your arm slot, if we have a true 3/4, low 3/4, high 3/4, an over-the-top arm slot, or anything in between those, we're always going to find ourselves in a relatively 90 degree angle, meaning from our elbow across to our other shoulder, we want to think is nice and even. 90 degrees in that armpit. We also want to think 90 degrees in that elbow. We want this type of arm position, that 90-90, we'll call it, at the moment of foot strike. When our arm has loaded up to this position here at the moment of foot strike, and the upper body has not rotated yet, our body's rotation will accelerate the throw forward. If the arm is not in this 90-90 position, the body's rotation forward is going to be less than ideal and in sync with how the arm will flow after the body goes. So we're looking for this 90-90-ish position in that throwing arm at foot strike. What we can also notice at foot strike is, where is this glove at? It's in front of the body by the rib cage. We're not letting it, if we're thinking here's some water, don't drown the glove. Don't let your glove get wet. Don't drown that glove. This one right here is a little too high. Should be more towards the belt. Okay. When the glove gets finished into the body like this, it's able to help keep this front shoulder in line, meaning it's not going to open up early. Because if that front shoulder starts to open up early, that's going to start to pull the back shoulder forward early. And now we would not have separated our upper and lower halves as much, because the angle of the shoulders would begin to rotate forward, which would be more matching the angle of the hips. The final thing we're going to look at is this front leg. We see all these guys have different degrees of bend in their front legs. But what we're going to notice is that as the upper body now rotates to throw, we need to make our front leg become a firm fixture of which we can rotate around. So thinking about this front leg here turning into a flagpole. My flagpole is always going to be strongest if it's straight. Or at least I can't have my flagpole move forward while my body is trying to rotate forward. So we'll redraw these little outlines here, and we will have these guys. Oh man, that's all right. It's going to get back to it anyway. Boom. And now we'll watch as they go to throw. How that leg is locking out, stiffening up, straightening out. So that now that leg is here. Now that leg is here. Now that leg is here and here. From the bend, straightening it out. And what we can notice is as that leg locks out, stiffens up, straightens out, becomes that firm flagpole, notice how that upper body is able to catapult itself out in front and down more. Able to get out in front more. Out in front more. So that way, if we look, we can't get everyone exactly at release, but ball just out, ball just out, ball is coming out, ball is slightly a little bit more out than the bottom two. But we're able to look at this angle of the chin to the waist, back out to the front foot, boom, boom, boom. Just how out in front of themselves they're getting. And that's because of that front leg's ability to lock out. So we can see that they're starting, boom, boom, there, and there. So now it's not just the arm throwing the ball down. It's the body throwing the ball down. It's the body going down with the throw. Body accelerating down. And as the body's accelerating down, the lower half is firming up. So that way, as I need to finish all this violent rotation, I have the ability to do that around that firm front leg. I have that ability to rotate around. I can finish all that violent rotation from my back leg around. I can finish all that violent rotation from my hips around. I can finish all that violent rotation out of my back shoulder around, giving my arm plenty of time to slow down and giving the back muscles, my scapular muscles, all the time they need to activate and slow down that rapidly accelerating arm. All right, we're going to be discussing the mechanics from a front view, and we're just going to concern ourselves with our path or the flow down the mound. So we already got these videos to the top of these guys' leg lifts. Obviously, every pitcher comes down the mound at different rates, different speeds. However, to make these guys flow together, I have changed up their speeds to fit. So what we're going to see is that we got Jerry Jones over here getting that front leg fully extended and really sitting into his delivery. We got Greinke, who's got his knee, which is going to be further back towards second base than his foot is. He's really taking this front knee and kind of curling it back so that his front hip stays closed. And Kirby is going like Jones here with his front leg, but he's keeping it in a more bent position rather than kicking it straight out like Jones. But what we do notice is no matter how these guys load into their back hips, getting down into their legs, engaging their lower halves, what do we notice? We notice where the glove is going. And that's to help them be able to see over their front shoulder. They want to be looking down the barrel of their shoulder, because the longer we can be looking here over this shoulder as we proceed down the mound. Obviously, we've gotten back to center, but look, we're still looking right over that shoulder. Still looking right over that shoulder. Still looking right over that front shoulder. The longer we can do that into our moment of foot strike, bam, bam, we can see front shoulder, and our head is still trying to fight to keep that front, or rather our front shoulder is still fighting to stay above our chin. The front shoulder is still fighting to stay in above the chin. The front shoulder is still fighting to stay in above the chin. And when we do that, we can see that the back hip now has been able to come through, exposing the belt buckle to the batter, to our catcher, but preventing, because that front shoulder's fought to stay in so that we continue to look over it. Look what that's done with our chest. It's kept it squared up, squared up, squared up, as that lower half has been able to fire, and there lies our upper lower half separation that we're trying to achieve. And now here comes the most important part. Getting into this position is key for both our power production, our ability to throw the baseball with our body, thus reducing the amount of stress that's going on through our arm during that delivery, and helping ensure, this wasn't the straightest line here, helping ensure our energy continues to flow to the catcher. All right, we can see that head staying there, that head staying there. Kirby's fighting to keep it in there. And you can see he's fighting to keep it in there because it did not go more out there. So we're rotating that back shoulder. We're rotating that back shoulder forward. 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 So that way all of our power can be flung through those fingers, out through that ball, forward. If we watch that again without any interruption, into foot strike, out of foot strike. Everything staying in line with our target. And then noticing as they're getting into release, where are those chin and chests going? To the target. To the target. The angle of our trunk, this mass from our shoulders through our waist, our trunk right now is upright. It's above our hips. In relation to the ground, it's in a 90-degree angle. As we get into release, those trunks in relation to the ground are no longer up here trying to throw the baseball. Instead, in relation to the ground, these trunks of these elite throwers of the baseball, both in terms of command, the best to ever do it, In terms of longevity and success, one of the best to do it, and an upcomer with elite velocity and potential to be an all-star. Every one of their trunks at release went from being up here at foot strike to out here at release, bringing that energy down the mound, but most importantly, towards our target. And that's something that we're able to see even easier and more clearly in the side view videos. All right, so if we kind of take this back once more and we see these arm slots, we'd say, boom. Oops, let me draw a better line than that. Right, we're at a high 3/4, 3/4. We are in a same thing, 3/4, high 3/4. Same thing here, right? So these are some of your most common arm slots are the 3/4 to high 3/4 arm slot. And then what we'll look at next here are some guys that are in that lower 3/4 tier. So we'll let, we got Luis Hill, Kyle Harrison, and Carl Crawford. Right, so the same thing, moment of that foot strike, we can see that they're still fighting to keep that front shoulder in, keep that front shoulder in, fighting to keep that front shoulder in, and then coming to release and through, we can see how those heads are fighting to stay in. Luis Hill a little bit outside, but we can see through release, bam, it's there, it's there, it's there, it's there. Now it's out, which is no big deal. It's already stable for long enough post-release, bam, that he could do a cartwheel over here if he wanted to after. So fighting to keep that front shoulder in, and by doing that, the shoulders have stayed squared up, and with a good lower half timing and pattern sequencing, we got the back hip to have come forward, the back hip to have come forward, exposing that belt buckle to the batter, creating that upper and lower half separation that we're trying to seek in order to achieve higher velocities and minimize the stress that's put on our arm during these high intense and continuous throws. If we then take these guys into their moment of release, we got that same concept that we did earlier, and we can see here's our low 3/4, even getting closer, some would say, to even true sidearm. We have that low 3/4, and we got that 3/4 to low 3/4. But what we can notice is all the same with those different arm slots, but the most common arm slots in our game. All these guys are fitting the same bill in their own unique ways, but these important key points are all very much getting checked off by each, no matter what. All right, bud. We got your video here synced up. We'll play it 2 times through. First time will be all in motion here for you to see what it looks like. and for you to be able to easily get back to this spot to rewatch this particular clip as often as you want. Excuse me. Second time we play it here, we'll pause it at that moment of foot strike so we can better see the comparisons that we just learned with the big leaguers, so that way we have an idea of what we're going to want to start working on here to help you throw harder, more accurately, or with better movement. So we can see here at foot strike, we got the biggest thing I want you to pay attention to is the alignment of this front leg. This visually looks awkward. It looks like your whole body is kind of in this lane here. But we know your back leg is in this lane here. And we also know that our throwing lane is in this lane here. So your back leg and the throwing leg are all taking you that way. However, the position of your front leg and the angle of your front leg has now positioned your body in this way. So now you're going to have to fight against what's your body's natural rotation is going to want to be, which is going to want to be around this axis this way. And instead, send everything straight forward like our throwing lane and our back leg is telling us to. So we just have one thing that wants to do a certain movement, and then we got another thing that wants to do a certain movement, and because they're not agreeing, we're just going to lose out on some things. Visually, one of those things is that our upper body is starting to come forward with its rotation early, right? We can see this entire Falcons logo here, where we just learned and saw with those big leaguer videos at foot strike, especially from the front view, we should be seeing as best as possible this chin looking over this shoulder. And we can just see that the last time your shoulder was in that position was right here. And if we notice, right here is the very first time you start to get connection with the ground. But because your foot overly rotates, because we only have to rotate to the target, and because your toe is beyond that, you're overly rotating this front foot, it's taking longer for the front foot's rotation to conclude. So by the time that entire foot does get into the ground, your shoulders were like, dang, I could not wait any longer. I had to come through. So now, because of that, we're losing out on power, and we're also adding stress to the arm to make these throws because we're not using the kinetic chain as well. We're not creating energy from the ground and sending it up as efficiently as we could, because as we're trying to send this power up, this is already starting to come through. So by the time it does come up, we've already begun the rotation, meaning the arm has had to do a little extra to start it on its own instead of the body creating it and starting it. So how can we fix this? Well, your lower body, back foot and front foot toe is telling me that your body wants to stride in a more straighter path down the mound, but your foot only rotates to here. So if we take this back to better understand that, and we look right here, your foot is out here. Obviously your knee as well is out here, but we're just talking about the foot, and we'll talk about the heel part of it specifically. It's out towards third base, dugout. Now it's making its way towards home. Now it's starting to rotate a little bit more. Now it's starting to rotate a little bit more. Now it gets into the ground early. And I say early because your toe keeps rotating. This part of your body wants to keep rotating. And the only reason it wants to keep rotating over to here is because what's pretty almost directly above this? Your knee. And what's pretty much almost directly above that? This hip. So if our heel, aka our foot, because our leg connects into our foot via that heel, if your heel here rotated more around, and instead of getting put into the ground here, 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 it gets put into the ground here, now we could see that the toe would be more here. And then where's that knee? The knee is here. And where's the hip? The hip is here. So now our angle is this. And if that angle is this, the throwing lane becomes a lot more also like this for your lower body. What's also going to happen is that because the leg is going to continue to rotate around more, the foot's going to rotate around more, the heel is going to get more out in front of you. That's going to get the entire leg into the ground quicker because it's not going to be heel outside of my foot starts to get down. Then the inside part of my foot gets down next. That's taken a lot of time, even though it seems like it's quick because it's just your foot, but it's a lot of ba-dunk, da-dunk, da-dunk. When if we can just get the whole foot to land here, it's going to land flush and flat like a duck on a pond. And that's going to occur a lot quicker. Instead of it having to take 3 different sides of your foot to hit the ground, the foot just hits the ground flat altogether. I think really after watching your video a handful of times here, that's your biggest thing that's going to help you with all 3 categories. Throwing more strikes, throwing harder, and throwing with less stress. Oops, sorry, got an alarm going off here. Helping you with the 3 main categories of throwing harder by also taking stress off the arm. So we are reducing our chance of injury. And we're also going to increase our command because we're able to stay in this throwing lane for a lot longer. So we're going to just want to do drills that are going to help encourage us to rotate this foot more in line with the back foot. We can still have our stride be closed off because your back foot's here. And again, we said the leg connects to the heel, right? So that means your body, when you stand upright, it's going to be more here. And we can see that because there's your chest. Or rather, your back, sorry. So if this front foot lands here, and this lane over here, that's still slightly across your body. Right? So I'm not trying to eliminate this slight across your body alignment your lower body gets you into, but I just want your heel and your foot to agree in its alignment so that way our leg can agree. Because if we're going to be sending power this way, it's tough to throw into ourselves to create maximum power if this is in a position where it's easy for it to buckle this way. But if I'm trying to throw my upper body this way and I want to block that with this so that way I'm throwing into myself, it's going to be a lot easier to do that if my front foot's not open like this and then putting my lower body into a alignment as such. So whether that's thinking land with a slightly closed front foot to help you with this, that could be one thought. Another thought can be just let's get this front leg to rotate more before it's in the ground. And something that can help you with that is just noticing in this position here, your toe is behind your heel. So this is closed. That's opened. That's closed. Right now you're closed. We're trying to stay closed as long as we can, like in hitting. That front shoulder or front hip or front foot opens early, we're not going to deal damage to the baseball. Same thing applies to throwing. If we open early or if we rotate early and gradually, that's not going to be the same as rotating late and explosively. So we can see very quickly, boom, there goes your toe already out in front. And now it's front. So then when it's time to rotate, actually, let me draw a better circle for you. When it's time to rotate, what do you think is going to happen when we rotate the back foot? The front foot's going to want to rotate as well because our body's always in symmetry, right? It may not be perfect symmetry, but it's symmetrical. We're trying to flow symmetrical, right? So when this throwing arm starts to load, what does this glove elbow do? Meets that load, into itself. We're always trying to stay symmetrical as we're flowing. So because this front foot opened early, when it's time for the back foot to rotate, the front foot's going to also rotate. Rotate. So that's what also gets this front foot into the alignment that we're trying to avoid. So another way to go about this could be to not even think about all the things we talked about already, but to think about just trying to keep my heel leading the way for as long as possible. And then once it's time to rotate, my backside knows already by itself, just muscle memory, when to go. I doubt you're actually thinking now. It's just happening. So if we can just think about actively keeping that closed, when this goes naturally all by itself, this will go naturally all by itself. And as long as we've been able to keep it closed to like at least here, we're going to be gravy. Because you do a lot of other things very, very well. The one thing I do think is going to clean up on its own, it's not the biggest deal, but it could, potentially help you with some extra power, is that when we do get into foot strike, we can just see that we do have a lot of our body already going down, but you do a great job of being able to get more of that through release. But a lot of guys that you'll see at foot strike are going to be more upright. Maybe they have a little bit forward, but you do have kind of an aggressive amount forward. I do know a pretty elite big leaguer that I'll show you here in a moment that does do this, similar to what you have here. But it's my belief that the reason that your upper body is getting there to this type of position is because this front foot has been opened and wanting to go, that it makes this want to go as well, which I love the aggressiveness. I love your tempo down the mound. I don't ever want to discourage that. And that's why I've saved this part for last, and I don't even really need you to think about trying to change this because I'm thinking once we clean this up, it'll clean this up as well. But we just get a little out in front early. But again, I can show you one of the most elite strike throwers in our game who also possesses great velocity as well, who's very similar to you with that, and that's George. Kirby. So we'll pause him at foot strike as well. Right, so there's Curbster. Oh, let's do it this way. There. So like I said, both of you guys have a similar, if we went through the crotch, his is maybe not as extreme. Maybe I gotta go a little bit further with him. I'll say right there. Yeah. So you guys are pretty darn close to one another. And we just kind of figured out from nose to like mid thigh. And we went, he's a little blurry, but we'll kind of go here. And I'm on a trackpad in my MacBook, so my straight line is not that great. So maybe just a little bit taller, Kirby is. Just a little bit more through the belt versus you. But again, I don't want us to try to clean this up because your tempo down the mound is so good as it is already. And like I said, I think once we clean up this front foot and how it's landing and the position it's landing in, this will clean up with it. So all in all, dude, a lot of good stuff in the delivery here. But we just got to get this foot's position to agree with the foot's alignment, rather, to agree with the positioning that your toe is telling me it would be most comfortable in. And that's this type of angle rather than this type of angle. We just need to get that heel back under, and that'll straighten everything up for us. All right, Fish, you got your video here synced up. We'll play it 2 times through. First time will be all one motion so you can see what you look like here. Second time, we'll pause it at that moment foot strike, so that way we can see the positions that your body's gotten into, and we can compare those to the big leaguers, and that way we can help you understand what's going to happen after that moment of time as we go to make our throw, and to help you clean up some things here. So again, let me pull up this real quick as I'm setting this up. We know foot strike is the moment that front foot not just touches the ground, but we're able to get the weight into the ground. And if we watch like over here, we can see the mound kind of be giving there. If I even zoom in, oops. I hope you can't hear that kid screaming across the road. If we do it now, you can see how the mound is kind of buckling under the weight of you. So once our weight gets into the mound, there is our moment of foot strike. And we can see, if we think back to the side by, or the front view videos that we were looking at earlier, where we had the 3 wide, at that moment of foot strike, we want to still be looking down the barrel of our shoulder, and we can see your front shoulder has begun to open up, which causes that backside shoulder to begin to come through early. So now our shoulder angle and our hip angle are getting closer to the same, where we're trying to separate those two to have that upper body be more in this type of alignment when our weight gets into the ground. So what we can say here is our upper body's rotation is occurring early. We need to delay our upper body's rotation. We need to be able to hold this, we need to be able to hold this lane of elbow, wrist, glove through this lane for longer before it gets into this lane, because once it's in this lane, we can see this is a big lane. This is a smaller lane. And as soon as it gets out of the smaller lane, it gets into danger zone. And danger zone is like beyond this line here. And we can see the spacing from where we want to get to, and danger is not that different from one another. And then everything out here is detrimental to our velocity and to our command, and even more importantly for you as a lefty, our ability to have life on our fastball. So what we're going to notice is as we play this through as slow as we can, those things that we want to be in this lane are still in this lane. And now is when we start to lose one of those positions. The other one, the wrist, is getting close, and the glove is still good. Now we got everything, elbow in our good lane, wrist in our good lane, glove in our good lane. Now we got to find a way to keep all three of these in this lane here. But what we're going to see is that elbow now is in the danger zone, which isn't the worst thing, as long as the wrist and glove can stay exactly where they're at the rest of the time. But what we're going to see is that wrist has now gotten over here, and by the time that weight gets into the ground, the glove is over there as well. So now we've just gotten ourselves to open up early, and that's what causes this curling of your upper body. Because the front shoulder is starting to open your chest, we can see that logo of your shirt starting to come through. And because that's coming through early, the back shoulder is going to get sent up early because this is going down early. Boom. So now we've created this posture with our upper body, and now we will rotate around this axis. I am a big, firm believer in being as best you can rotating around this axis. Because as you can see here, it's a lot quicker to get to here than it is to go all the way around this to here. We have to waste a lot of power and energy to get through this, and we don't have a lot left this. In the clean example, we get through this easily, and now just power. Right, so big time for you is to study those front view examples, especially on the second half of guys that are the lower slot guys. Your goal should try to be like a Kyle Harrison, who's super upright, and give yourself the ability to say, if I get to the Carl Crawford, the guy who's on the left, I'll be okay with that. Right? So if we pulled those up again real quick for you. Right? So boom, foot strike. We're here, and we're here with these guys. As they then get through release, Kyle Harrison is still there, losing a little bit there. But it's okay if we lose it here a little bit because we're here at that point in time. You're starting, if we get you up in this mix, boom. And get you to foot strike, we can see this difference here from toe up to belly button through knee. Oops. And we get toe up through belly button. As we can't see his toe. Come on now. We know it's here. And then we get to release for you. And now you're here. We get these guys to release. Kyle Harrison, like I said, is just gangster right in the middle. Crawford loses it a little bit. But if we take yours up from here, the amount that you're losing it from center to where he's losing it from center is not at equal rates of impact because yours begun early and continued. His only went here because of his violent rotation of the shoulders. This first part of your tilt was not caused by rotation. Just this little guy was caused by rotation, right? But the whole thing gets put into play. If we're going to get out into your positioning here, we'd much rather have it being occurring from a locked and loaded, here I come at you. Because just to there, and then where's it right back at? Bam, he's stacking it back up. He ain't falling off. He's under control with it. Whereas yours, sometimes you're falling off with it. And obviously, his video doesn't continue, but if it did, both of these guys' back hips just come around, foot touches the ground, and they're just upright. Whereas you're going off screen. So, your biggest thing, bud, is going to be learning how to keep this front shoulder in longer. So that way at foot strike, we're not already opening up here. Keep this front shoulder curled in, tucked in, looking over your chin, over, just like you got it here, trying to maintain this for longer. So we just got to learn how to flip this glove in here tighter, so that way that this elbow can just come into our body as this elbow comes around to this body. We're coming into ourselves. Right now you're just kind of going around yourself a little bit. So we just got to learn how to flip this elbow in to our rib cage, so that way it doesn't keep pulling our shoulder out. But if we pulled this in, this shoulder could stay in. But because the elbow keeps going out, the shoulder eventually is going to get impacted and go out as well.